My name is Hannah Collins. I'm 33 years old, and I just got off the most infuriating phone call of my life. My stepmother, Vivian, was practically gloating. "I sold your cabin to teach you a little lesson in humility," she hissed through the phone. "The new buyers move in next Thursday." Her voice dripped with smug satisfaction, convinced she'd won the final battle. What she didn't know was that I had a secret meeting with Dad's attorney just last month. So I just smiled and replied, "Good luck with that." If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. This story's only getting started. Growing up in a quiet corner of Vermont, my father, James Collins, was my everything. After my mother left when I was 5, he raised me in a cozy, wood-paneled cabin nestled in the Green Mountains. He built a modest but respected landscaping business from scratch, often coming home late, covered in dirt and smelling of pine. But no matter how tired he was, we always made time for cocoa and crossword puzzles before bed. He taught me how to check oil in my car, split firewood, and speak up when something didn't feel right. He wasn't just a dad, he was my compass. That's why it hit me so hard when, 5 years ago, he introduced me to Vivian at a town council fundraiser. She was polished, elegant, and full of questions about Dad's company. I was 28 then, running a remote bookkeeping firm, and just happy to see him laughing again. They married after 6 months. At first, she seemed decent, redecorating the cabin, organizing community events, cooking elaborate meals. But there was something in the way she scanned the room, like she was constantly calculating what things were worth, not what they meant. When Dad was diagnosed with late-stage stomach cancer last year, everything shifted. Vivian developed a sudden chronic fatigue condition and said she couldn't handle the stress. I moved in to care for him full-time. She complained that his four-stand clashed with the decor. She started sleeping in the guest room. And when hospice brought a hospital bed into the living room, she booked a week-long wellness retreat. One quiet afternoon, Dad pulled me close. His voice was weak but clear. "Hannah, after I'm gone, talk to Benjamin Clark. He's got the paperwork." Benjamin was Dad's lifelong friend and lawyer. I nodded, not realizing then just how important that promise would become. Dad passed away 2 months ago. At the memorial, Vivian wore pearls and crocodile tears. She fluttered around like a grieving widow from a movie, but I caught her glancing at her phone more than once. My tears seemed to irritate her, like they were somehow stealing her spotlight. And now she thinks she sold my childhood home. But there's a clause in Dad's will she never saw coming. Let's just say, she sold something she never owned. And I'm just getting started. The days after the funeral passed in a fog of paperwork and strained conversations. Vivian wasted no time making it clear she was now in charge. "You should come by this weekend and take any personal things you want," she said coolly over coffee at a local cafe. "I'm planning to make a few updates to the place. Fresh start, you know." Her tone was clipped, businesslike, as if we were closing out a storage unit, not dismantling my childhood home. The official will reading was scheduled for 10 days later at Benjamin Clark's law office. Vivian showed up in a tailored charcoal suit, her hair swept into a polished chignon, fingers stacked with silver rings. I wore a soft navy dress, Dad's favorite. He used to call it my stormy sky dress. It felt right. Benjamin began reading the document. Vivian leaned back in her chair, a satisfied smile growing with each sentence. According to the will, dated 4 years earlier, she was the primary heir. She would inherit the house, the landscaping business, and most of Dad's financial accounts. I was left a modest trust and his restored 1965 pickup collection, which he'd lovingly rebuilt over the last decade. Vivian's eyes flicked to me, victorious. Like she'd finally swept the board. But I couldn't understand it. Dad had always said the cabin would be mine one day. It had belonged to Grandpa Collins before him, and to his father before that. That house was our legacy. The kitchen doorway still bore the faded pencil marks tracking my height. The built-in bench beneath the bay window still held the carved initials Dad, and I had added one rainy afternoon. The treehouse in the backyard, he built it with his bare hands when I turned 8. The idea of losing that place felt like losing Dad all over again. As we stepped into the hallway, Vivian gave my arm a little pat. You've got 2 weeks to collect anything sentimental. After that, I'm bringing in a contractor to gut the garage and attic." Her voice was syrupy, but her eyes glittered with condescension. That night, curled on the couch in my apartment, I remembered Dad's last quiet instruction: "Talk to Ben, just you and him." Tears slid down my face. What had he known? A week after the will reading, I returned to Benjamin's office for a private meeting. His law firm, nestled in an old brick building near the town square, smelled faintly of cedar and leather. The walls were lined with thick legal volumes and framed family photos. One of them, I realized, was of Dad fishing with Ben in college. "Thank you for coming, Hannah," Ben said, standing to shake my hand. "Your father wanted this conversation to happen, just the two of us." I sat down slowly as he opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed manila envelope. About 8 months ago, once his condition became terminal, James came to me with serious concerns about Vivian's motives. He said gently. He worried she had married him for financial gain, and that her behavior during his illness confirmed those fears. My throat tightened. "He never told me. He didn't want to burden you while you were caring for him," Ben said. "Instead, he made arrangements." He slid the envelope toward me and began laying out the contents: legal documents, notarized and signed. 6 months before his passing, your father transferred the deed to the house directly to you via a quit claim. It's already on file with the county. Vivian has no idea. I stared down at the papers. My name, Hannah L. Collins, was listed as the property owner. But at the will reading, I said, confused. Ben nodded. That will reflects his estate as of 4 years ago. He never updated it. He wanted Vivian to believe she was getting everything so she wouldn't interfere. I sat back, breath-catching. For the first time in weeks, something inside me shifted. He hadn't forgotten me. He'd just played the long game. And now, the game was mine to finish. He knew if she found out while he was still alive, it would have made his final months even harder, Ben said quietly, placing more documents on the desk. I leaned forward as he slid over a folder: property tax records now registered in my name. He showed me how Dad had arranged for utilities to transfer into my accounts upon his death. Even the homeowner's insurance had been updated to reflect me as the policyholder. Everything had been done quietly, thoroughly. Dad had covered every legal base to make sure no one could dispute my ownership. Your father also left this for you, Ben said, holding out a sealed envelope. My name, Hannah, was written in Dad's strong, looping handwriting. My fingers shook as I opened it, the weight of the moment pressing down on my chest. My dearest Hannah, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've kept your promise to speak with Ben. I'm sorry for the secrecy, but it was the only way to protect you and our home from Vivian. I ignored too many red flags. I wanted so badly to believe in her goodness. But the truth became too loud to overlook. This house belongs to you. It always has. You are the heart of this family, and the one who understands the stories held in every corner of that cabin. Vivian only sees its value in dollars. Be careful, Hannah. She won't take this news well. Let Ben help you navigate it. And remember, I am so proud of you. Always. Love. Dad. Tears spilled freely as I folded the letter and held it close to my chest. He had shielded me in the only way he still could. Even after death, he found a way to protect what mattered. What do I do now? I asked softly, dabbing my eyes. Ben sat back. That depends on what you want. Legally, you could take possession of the property immediately. Vivian has no legal right to live there or make changes without your permission. I hesitated. Vivian believed she held all the cards. That illusion made her dangerous. What if I wait? Just see what she tries. Ben gave a slow, thoughtful nod. That might be wise. Sometimes, when you give people enough rope, they expose themselves. Just know any attempt she makes to sell, renovate, or even remove fixtures from the property would be illegal. We built a plan. I'd temporarily move in with my best friend Sarah, avoiding day-to-day contact with Vivian. Meanwhile, Ben would quietly monitor the situation and prepare to act if needed. All bills and taxes tied to the house would continue auto-paying from the accounts Dad had arranged. Your father was a good man, Ben said as I stood to leave. He deserved better than what she gave him. I left the office feeling both empowered and apprehensive. Legally, the house was mine. But the war with Vivian wasn't over, it hadn't even started. The next morning, I returned to the cabin while Vivian was at a spa appointment. I packed photo albums, my grandmother's quilt, and Dad's old woodworking books, priceless memories Vivian might toss out in a rage. I loaded them carefully into my car. As I closed the trunk, I heard tires on gravel. Vivian pulled in behind me, stepping out of her luxury SUV with a cool smirk. Finally accepting reality, she asked, arms folded. "Just getting organized," I said evenly. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "I've got a meeting with a realtor tomorrow. This area's booming, I could make a fortune." I bit down hard on my tongue. She still didn't know. I drove off with her smug words chasing me. But I knew something she didn't. 3 days later, when I returned to gather a few more things, I found the locks changed. I called her. She answered with a syrupy fake cheer. "Why, Hannah," she said sweetly, "I wasn't expecting you." "Oh dear, did I forget to give you the new keys?" Vivian asked with a faux concerned tone. "I've just been so scattered since your father passed. Security's important, you know. There have been break-ins in the neighborhood." I clenched my jaw. "I need to get the rest of my things, Vivian." "Of course, dear," she said sweetly. "How about next Tuesday between 2 and 4? My calendar is so full lately." When Tuesday arrived, I pulled up at the cabin right on time, only to find a "coming soon" sign planted in the front yard. Inside, Vivian stood beside a real estate agent, smiling brightly as prospective buyers wandered through my house. I sat frozen in my car, heart pounding. As soon as the last car pulled away, I called Ben Clark. "She's already showing the house," I said, snapping photos of the sign. "Can she actually sell it?" "No," Ben reassured me. "Any attempt would be fraudulent. But we need documentation. Keep taking photos. Record dates, names, anything you see." That weekend, Vivian finally allowed me to retrieve more belongings under strict supervision. She hovered behind me like I was a shoplifter, arms crossed, tapping her polished nails against her phone. The house didn't feel like home anymore. Family portraits had been stripped from the walls, replaced with bland prints of sailboats and flowers. Dad's favorite leather chair, the one he always read the paper in, the one he sat in during chemo, was gone. "Where's Dad's chair?" I asked, pausing in the den. "Donated," she replied without looking up from her phone. It was old. Didn't match the new decor. My stomach dropped. That chair wasn't just furniture, it was where he'd held me after Mom left, where he whispered, "You've got this," after my first heartbreak. And now it was discarded like garbage. "And the books?" I asked, glancing around the now bare study shelves. Vivian gave a light shrug. "Some professor came by from the university. Paid $800 for the lot. They were just collecting dust anyway." I blinked. My father's first editions, Hemingway, Steinbeck, Baldwin, all sold off like flea market junk. He had planned to pass them to me. They were his soul. I went upstairs to pack the rest of my clothing, only to discover Grandma Evelyn's jewelry box missing from the dresser. It had been there 2 weeks ago. "Vivian, the jewelry box, where is it?" She blinked innocently. "I assumed you already packed it. Or maybe the cleaning service moved it. They were very thorough after James passed." The box didn't hold high-value items, just my mother's wedding ring and grandmother's pearls. But they were family. Gone, probably sold, possibly hidden. My chest ached. Every visit became a new wound. She accidentally broke a framed photo of Dad and me fishing. She claimed water-damage ruined boxes of childhood keepsakes in the attic, even though the roof hadn't leaked once in 30 years. Worse, she hosted more impromptu walkthroughs, letting strangers tread through rooms where my family's laughter still echoed. Back at Sarah's house, I collapsed into the twin bed she'd set up for me. Her guest room was now filled with the few things I'd managed to save: Dad's favorite books, the quilt, a framed photo she salvaged before Vivian got to it. "She can't get away with this," Sarah said fiercely one night as I tearfully recounted the sold record collection, Dad's jazz albums, his Sunday ritual. "I know," I whispered. "But Ben says we have to wait. If we show our hand now, if she finds out the house is mine, she'll explode," Sarah finished. Exactly. And I wasn't ready. Not yet. Now she'll fight it, I told Ben Clark over the phone that night. She'll claim Dad wasn't in his right mind when he transferred the deed. It'll turn into a long, messy legal battle. Likely, he said. But every unauthorized action she takes strengthens your case. She's already selling everything that matters, I whispered, staring at the empty bookshelf where Dad's favorite pipe used to rest. Not everything, Ben reminded me. I reached for the envelope, Dad's final letter, tucked safely in my bedside drawer. His words reminded me why we were being strategic. And we're documenting it all, I said. That helps, right? Absolutely, Ben said. When we do confront her, we'll have a complete record. 2 months after Dad's death, Vivian called me out of the blue. I've decided to list the cabin officially next week, she announced breezily, as if informing me about a brunch menu. The market is on fire. I'd be a fool not to cash in. My voice caught. That house has been in our family for 3 generations. And now it's mine, Vivian replied, her tone turning icy. Your father left it to me, not you. Maybe if you'd been more supportive during our marriage, things would be different. I blinked, stunned by the revisionist history. I had been the one driving Dad to chemo. I had spoon-fed him soup during his worst days. I had missed months of work to be by his side while she vacationed and booked spa appointments. You're making a mistake, I told her, struggling to stay calm. The mistake, she snapped, was James believing you deserved anything after how disrespectful you were. Consider this a life lesson, Hannah. Actions have consequences. She hung up. I called Ben immediately. She's listing the house next week. Let her, he said calmly. Every step she takes, every showing, every listing, every lie, helps us. When she tries to finalize a sale, it becomes real fraud. Right now, she could still claim ignorance. But once she signs on the dotted line, what if someone actually buys it? I asked. I can't let strangers live in our house. No one can legally buy what she doesn't own, he reassured me. A title search will expose the quitclaim deed. But we're not going to stop her yet. We need her to cross the line. So I agreed, reluctantly. But watching that listing go live a week later felt like a punch to the gut. The photos looked like a magazine spread, clinical, staged, cold. My childhood home stripped of warmth. The price? Nearly double its actual value. For the next 2 weeks, I drove by often, watching strangers tour the house, chatting with Vivian in the driveway. She'd installed a lockbox and moved to a luxury apartment downtown. She told neighbors she was downsizing after her tragic loss. Meanwhile, she continued selling off Dad's belongings, his tools, his workshop bench, the carved walking stick he made for me when I graduated high school. It felt like losing him again and again. But Ben kept documenting everything. She's hanging herself with every move, he told me. Still, my patience wore thin. Then came the call. I sold your house to teach you a lesson about respect, Vivian sneered, 3 weeks after listing the property. The Bradfords signed the papers yesterday. The new owners move in next week. Her voice dripped with smugness. I took a breath, remembering Ben's advice. Good luck with that, I said calmly. That silence on the line? That was the sound of her world beginning to crack. Vivian kept pushing, clearly hoping to rattle me. They offered $50,000 over asking, she gloated. Cash deal. No contingencies. The closing is set for Monday. I gripped the phone tighter. Congratulations. She wasn't finished. They planned to gut the entire first floor, she added with venom. Open concept is all the rage, you know. That hideous wood paneling in the study, that thing you and your father were so sentimental about? It's going first. My stomach turned. That paneling had been installed by my grandfather. Every plank had been chosen by hand. Dad and I spent the summer I turned 16 refinishing it together, staining the wood in the warm afternoon sun, laughing as we wiped sawdust off each other's faces. I swallowed the lump in my throat. The Bradfords would never get the chance to touch a single inch of it. Is there anything else? I asked, my voice remarkably steady. Her irritation at my calmness crackled through the phone. Just that I'll be using the money to buy a beachfront condo in Florida. I think your father would have wanted me to enjoy my widowhood in comfort. Don't you? I didn't answer right away. Then, I think my father would have wanted a lot of things. Goodbye, Vivian. I hung up and immediately called Ben Clark. She did it, I said. She actually signed the sale. The closing is Monday. Perfect, Ben said, sounding pleased. Now we can act. I'll contact the title company this afternoon and send over the deed showing your ownership. Without clear title, the sale can't go through. What about the Bradfords? I asked. They don't know. They didn't do anything wrong. They'll be informed before closing. It's unfortunate they got caught up in this, but legally, they have no right to the property. Relief mingled with tension in my chest. After months of watching Vivian strip away every trace of my father from our home, the confrontation was finally happening. Part of me wanted to see her face when she realized her plan had crumbled. Another part dreaded the chaos she was sure to unleash. Later that day, Ben called back. The title company's been informed. They're already reaching out to Vivian's agent. We'll hear from her soon. We didn't have to wait long. My phone rang within the hour of Vivian. I let it go to voicemail. She called again. And again. Then the text started. What have you done? The title company says there's a problem. Fix this now. If this is some trick, you will regret it. I forwarded everything to Ben. Ignore her, he said. Let her stew. The more unhinged she becomes, the better it is for us. That evening, Vivian showed up at Sarah's apartment. She pounded on the door, shouting my name loud enough to attract the neighbors. Sarah and I watched from the peephole as she alternated between threats and loud declarations about my mental instability, trying to discredit me in front of witnesses. Eventually, she gave up. When we opened the door later, we found an envelope taped to it. Inside was a scribbled letter. You need to call me before making accusations that ruin both our reputations. This can still be handled quietly. The next morning, Ben set a meeting for Saturday, 3 days before closing. All parties would be present: Vivian, the Bradfords, both real estate agents, the title company rep, Ben, and me. Vivian tried to move the meeting to her lawyer's office. Ben refused. Hannah is the legal property owner, he reminded her. This meeting will take place on her terms. As the legal owner, I had every right to determine the venue. That night, I barely slept, mentally rehearsing what I'd say when finally face to face with Vivian. Sarah helped me pick an outfit that projected confidence. I wore a tailored navy blue blazer over a crisp white blouse, something I might have worn for a major marketing pitch back when I still worked full-time. You own that house, she reminded me, adjusting the collar on my jacket. And you own this moment. Walk in like it. Despite her pep talk, my stomach churned as I parked outside Ben Clark's law office. Vivian's sleek black car was already there. Next to it sat a glossy SUV with New York plates, likely the Bradfords. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped inside, repeating Dad's words in my mind. Remember that I am proud of you. Always. The tension in the conference room was thick enough to cut. Vivian sat stiffly beside her real estate agent, Diane, a rail-thin woman who kept checking her phone. Across the table sat Thomas and Emily Bradford, a smartly dressed couple in their 40s, whispering to each other with tight expressions. Their agent, Jeffrey, sifted through a stack of documents, his brow furrowed. At the far end, a woman from the title company, Ms. Garcia, maintained a calm, unreadable expression. Vivian's eyes narrowed the second she saw me. She was dressed like a magazine spread for high society widow: sleek black dress, pearls, and flawlessly applied makeup. But behind the elegance, there was no warmth, no grief, just calculation. Can we please get started? She snapped. I have a hair appointment at noon, and I'd like to resolve this little misunderstanding quickly. Ben straightened in his chair. Thank you all for coming on short notice. I'm Ben Clark, attorney for Hannah Collins. He nodded toward the title rep, Ms. Garcia. If you could explain why we're here. Ms. Garcia opened a manila folder. During our standard title search for the property at 114 Chestnut Hill Lane, we discovered that the seller, Vivian Collins, is not the legal owner. She slid a copy of the deed across the table. According to official records, the property was transferred to Hannah Collins 6 months ago via a quitclaim deed signed by the previous owner, James Collins. The Bradfords looked visibly alarmed. This is outrageous, Vivian spat. My husband left me that house in his will. I have documentation. She yanked a stack of papers from her designer handbag and tossed them toward Ms. Garcia. The will does indicate your inheritance, Ms. Garcia confirmed after a moment's review. However, the quitclaim deed supersedes the will. Mr. Collins transferred the home to Ms. Collins while he was still alive. Legally, it was no longer his to include in the will. Vivian's face flushed deep red. This is forgery. James would never do this behind my back. Ben calmly slid another document across the table. This is the notarized quitclaim deed, signed on January 12th. The notary's affidavit confirms that James was of sound mind and under no duress. Thomas Bradford leaned forward. Are you saying we've been negotiating to buy a house from someone who doesn't own it? Precisely, Ben replied. Mrs. Vivian Collins has no legal right to sell this home. Any attempted sale would be fraudulent. Thomas looked stunned. But we already put down a $20,000 earnest deposit. We gave notice on our current home. Emily Bradford cried, her voice rising with panic. We're supposed to move in next week. Their real estate agent, Jeffrey, looked pale. The title search should have caught this earlier in the process. Normally, it would have, Ms. Garcia replied calmly. However, Mrs. Collins's agent requested an expedited closing, and we issued a preliminary title commitment based on the will. At the time, it appeared the property had clear title. All eyes turned to Diane, Vivian's agent. She shifted in her seat, clearly uncomfortable. Vivian assured me there would be no issues, she muttered. Vivian shot up from her chair. This is a conspiracy. James must have been manipulated. He was on heavy medications. Hannah took advantage of his condition and stole what rightfully belongs to me. That's quite an accusation, Ben said coolly. Especially considering Dr. Langer, James's oncologist, provided a signed statement confirming he was of sound mind during the entire period in question. He didn't mention the letter Dad had written me, the one that explained everything, meant only for me. What reasons? Vivian barked. What lies did he tell to justify betraying me? I looked at her directly. He knew Vivian. He saw how you treated him once he got sick. The spa weekends. The dinners out while I sat beside him in the hospital. He knew you were waiting for him to die so you could cash in. She flushed, her voice brittle. You turned him against me. It was always the two of you, your traditions, your inside jokes. I was never truly welcome. You were welcome, I said quietly, until you made it clear what you really cared about. Dad may have been sick, but he wasn't blind. There was silence. Then Thomas Bradford cleared his throat. While this family drama is certainly something, he said carefully, our immediate concern is our deposit and our living situation. We were set to close Monday. Ben turned to him. Mr. Bradford, you and your wife are innocent parties in this. Your earnest money will be refunded in full. The seller misrepresented her ownership, and that voids the deal. Misrepresented? Vivian snapped. I didn't know about that sneaky deed transfer. Ms. Garcia looked unimpressed. Mrs. Collins, every property sale requires the seller to sign an affidavit affirming they are the sole legal owner. You signed that document just last week. A beat of silence followed. Vivian had either knowingly committed fraud or signed legal documents without reading them. Either scenario put her on very shaky ground. I want my attorney, she snapped, reaching for her phone. You're absolutely entitled to legal representation, Ben said. But it won't change the facts. Hannah owns the house. The attempted sale was unlawful. Emily turned to her husband. We need to start looking for another house today. Then, fixing Vivian with a glare, she added, and we expect our deposit returned before the end of the day. The funds are still in escrow, Ms. Garcia confirmed. They'll be released by close of business. Thomas bristled. What about our moving expenses, the storage unit, the time we've wasted? We relied on representations made by Vivian and her agent. Jeffrey gave a solemn nod. You may have grounds for additional damages. Vivian's face went pale as the reality sank in. Legal action. Financial ruin. Public embarrassment. I watched her crumble, remembering the heirlooms she sold, the memories she erased. And knowing this reckoning had only just begun. Vivian had sold or discarded the heirlooms without a second thought. Her schemes, carefully laid, casually cruel, were now unraveling in real time, just as Dad had anticipated. The turning point had arrived, and Vivian was finally realizing she had badly, fatally, overplayed her hand. "This meeting is over," she snapped, rising from her chair and clutching her designer purse. "Not another word until my attorney arrives." Her voice was sharp, but her fingers trembled as she gathered her things. The crack in her facade was beginning to show. "You're welcome to reschedule," Ben said evenly. "However, several facts are not in dispute. The property at 114 Chestnut Hill Lane is legally owned by Hannah Collins. Any attempted sale is invalid, and your actions up to this point may constitute fraud." Vivian's agent, Diane, looked visibly distressed. "I was told the title was clear. If this goes public, my brokerage could lose its license." "Then perhaps," Ben said, "a more thorough due diligence process was in order. A standard title search, performed at the beginning of your listing, would have uncovered the deed transfer." "I was told the will was all we needed," Diane murmured weakly. "And you took her word without verifying it?" Jeffrey, the Bradford's agent, asked incredulously. "That's Real Estate 101. In the corner, the Bradfords whispered intensely. Finally, Thomas Bradford spoke for both of them. "We're seeking full restitution. Not just our earnest money, but our moving costs, storage fees, temporary housing, and the cost of legal consultation. This ordeal has cost us weeks of disruption." Vivian gave a short, bitter laugh. "That's not my problem. If anyone failed, it's the title company. They should have discovered this so-called deed transfer sooner." Ms. Garcia from the title company straightened. "The deed transfer was properly recorded with the county. Had we been allowed the standard review time, it would have shown up. But we were pressured into an expedited close, based on assurances from your agent." Diane looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. Ben wasn't finished. "We also have documented proof that numerous items were removed from the property without the legal owner's consent. Furniture, family heirlooms, even artwork. All of those were included in the property transfer to Hannah." My eyebrows rose. That part was news to me. I glanced at Ben. "Your father was meticulous," he said quietly. "The transfer included all fixtures and specified furnishings. Vivian had no right to sell or discard any of it." Vivian's face cycled through shock, rage, and then something colder, calculation. "James would never have done this," she hissed. "He must have been confused. Drugged. He didn't know what he was signing." "You're entitled to contest the transfer," Ben replied. "But you'll face substantial evidence." "You were his wife for 5 years," I said, voice steady. "I was his daughter for 33. And I was by his side when he made these arrangements." Ben slid another document across the table. "This is a statement from Dr. Levine, his oncologist, confirming James was mentally competent during treatment. We also have affidavits from his hospice nurse and 2 lifelong friends. All of them will testify he was clear-minded and determined to protect his legacy." Vivian's composure cracked again. "This is a temporary setback," she muttered. "No judge will uphold this transfer. Not once they hear the full story." I looked her in the eye. "What story, Vivian? That you married my father for his money? That you disappeared the moment he needed care? That you started selling his possessions before his body was even cold?" I challenged. "That's not true," Vivian snapped, but her eyes started away. "We have statements from neighbors who saw moving trucks at the property within a week of the funeral," Ben said calmly. "We also obtained receipts from auction houses and consignment stores showing items from the home being sold over the past 3 months, all without the consent of the legal property owner." Thomas Bradford stood abruptly. "I think we've heard enough." He turned to his agent. "Jeffrey, please ensure our deposit is returned today. And we'll expect an itemized restitution proposal by Monday." He then looked directly at Vivian. "And we may consider additional legal action for misrepresentation and fraud." Vivian went pale. "You can't sue me." "I didn't know. I thought I owned the house." Jeffrey shook his head. "Yet you signed legal affidavits declaring ownership without verification. That's negligent at best. Fraudulent at worst." As the Bradfords and their team packed up their documents and made their way out, Ben turned to Ms. Garcia from the title company. Please ensure the listing is pulled from all platforms immediately. And notify all agents that showings and open houses are to be cancelled. Already done, Ms. Garcia confirmed. We froze the listing the moment the title discrepancy was flagged. Vivian slowly lowered herself back into her chair, her once meticulous poise unraveling before our eyes. Her carefully orchestrated plans, her future built on my father's legacy, were collapsing. "What about the house?" she asked quietly. "Where am I supposed to live?" "That's up to Hannah," Ben said. "As the legal owner, she determines who may occupy the property." All eyes turned to me. I had imagined this moment countless times, seeing Vivian humbled, forced to reckon with what she had done. I expected satisfaction, maybe even triumph. But all I felt was a hollow, aching sadness for what Dad had suffered through in his final months and for what had been lost. "You have 48 hours to collect your personal belongings," I said, my voice calm. "Anything that belonged to my father, or that was in the house before your marriage stays. I'll have a team present to inventory everything during your move." Vivian's mouth fell open. 48 hours? That's impossible. I need at least 2 weeks. "You've had 3 months to remove or sell my family's possessions without permission," I reminded her. 48 hours is generous under the circumstances. "What about the things I already sold?" she said bitterly. "Some of them were quite valuable." Ben stepped in. "We've compiled a list of missing items with estimated value. You'll be expected to return the items or provide financial restitution." "This is robbery," Vivian hissed. "No," I replied, steady. "Robbery is what you've been doing since my father died. This is justice." As the meeting ended, Vivian's final wall of defense crumbled. Her voice cracked. "You have no idea what it was like," she said. "Being married to a man who always put his daughter first. Even when he was dying, he only thought of you." "He thought of both of us," I replied. "He left you the business, the investments, his retirement accounts. But he made sure you couldn't take everything." Vivian gathered her things with trembling hands. "This isn't over." "Actually, it is," Ben said firmly. "Should you choose to contest, we have ample documentation, your conduct during James's illness and afterward. Evidence that wouldn't help your case." His eyes met hers. "My professional advice? Accept this outcome. And move forward." After everyone left, I remained seated beside Ben, the silence finally catching up to me. "What now?" I asked quietly. "What now?" I asked softly. "Now," Ben replied with a gentle smile, "you reclaim your home." He closed the file folder with finality. "Vivian may try to test boundaries, but legally, she has no ground to stand on. The property is yours, just as your father intended." "And the Bradfords?" I asked. "They seemed like decent people caught in a terrible situation." "Unfortunately, that happens sometimes in real estate," Ben said. "They'll get their deposit back and likely pursue compensation from Vivian. But their issue is with her, not you." As I drove back to Sarah's apartment, something inside me finally uncoiled. For months, I had watched Vivian pick my family home apart, piece by painful piece. Now, I could begin to stitch it back together. That cabin, where Dad and I had built a lifetime of memories, was still ours. Safe. "You did it, Dad," I whispered, my hand brushing the steering wheel. "We did it." The next morning, Sarah and I pulled into the driveway of the cabin with 2 off-duty officers Ben had arranged to serve as witnesses. Vivian's luxury SUV was already there, and cardboard boxes were stacked haphazardly on the porch. She'd clearly spent the night packing. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. The polished, calculating widow was gone. Her hair was tangled, her silk blouse wrinkled, dark circles hollowing out her eyes. Still, she clung to a last shred of control. "I need more time," she said immediately. 48 hours isn't enough to sort through 5 years of marriage." "You've had 3 months," I replied. "And you've spent that time selling what didn't belong to you." She stepped aside reluctantly, letting us in. The inside of the house looked like a war zone. Half-filled boxes were everywhere. Picture hooks hung empty on the walls. Furniture was covered in moving blankets. I tried not to let the heartbreak show on my face. This was the home Dad built with love, and now it looked like a liquidation site. "These officers will remain while you pack," I explained calmly. An inventory specialist is arriving shortly to document what's left of the original furnishings. This is harassment, Vivian muttered. This is protection, I said flatly. Given your track record, I'd be foolish not to have witnesses. As she sulked and resumed packing, I walked slowly from room to room, noting what had vanished. Dad's antique desk? Gone. The grandfather clock from the hallway? Missing. The Persian rugs and oil paintings my grandmother had collected? Stripped. Even the custom fixtures had been swapped with cheap replacements. Upstairs, I entered the master bedroom. The closet door was slightly ajar. Something didn't sit right. Pushing past the remaining hangers, I spotted a stack of boxes marked Goodwill. I opened the top one cautiously, and there they were. The family photo albums, the ones she'd claimed were damaged. And underneath them, Grandma's jewelry box. The one she said the cleaning crew must have misplaced. Sarah, I called, my voice tight with restrained fury. Can you come here, please? She joined me quickly and snapped photos as I pointed. From the doorway, Vivian watched with narrowed eyes. I was going to return those, she said. In a box labeled Goodwill? Sarah asked, stunned. Hidden behind your clothes? Vivian didn't answer. She didn't need to. We already knew the truth. The inventory specialist, a meticulous woman named Helen, arrived just after noon. Dressed in a crisp blazer and armed with a clipboard, she moved room by room, documenting every remaining item in the house. She cross-referenced each piece with the detailed list Dad had created before the property transfer, a list I didn't even know existed. Vivian hovered behind her like a nervous shadow, flinching every time Helen snapped a photo or scribbled a note. What about the things I bought? Vivian demanded, stiffening as Helen tagged a modern sofa in the living room. That couch cost $4,000. I picked the fabric myself. Helen didn't flinch. According to the transfer agreement, all furnishings purchased during the marriage using joint funds or any accounts belonging to James Collins are included in the property. Vivian's face flushed. That's theft. That's the legal agreement your husband signed, Helen replied evenly. If you have receipts showing that item was purchased solely using your personal, non-joint funds, we can review it. Of course, Vivian had no such receipts. Dad had paid for nearly everything during their marriage, from his personal accounts or the business. Vivian had been given a generous allowance and access to multiple credit cards, but she had contributed nothing financially to the household. By late afternoon, her packing was complete. Clothing, a few pieces of furniture Helen had designated as her personal property, and various luxury items were loaded into the back of a moving truck. Sarah and I stood on the porch as it was all hauled away. Vivian lingered for a moment, looking back at the house. I did love him, she said quietly. In my own way. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say that wouldn't feel hollow next to months of deceit. She climbed into her car and both vehicles rolled down the gravel drive, out of my life, hopefully for good. The silence that followed was heavy. The house felt wounded, but still standing. Ours. Sarah squeezed my hand. You did it. You got your home back. What's left of it, I murmured, staring at the empty nail holes and scuffed floors. The next few weeks became a mission. I moved back into my old bedroom, now stripped of Vivian's workout gear. I repainted walls, repaired broken fixtures, and scoured antique shops across Vermont for replacements of the items she had sold. Then helped me file insurance claims on the missing items covered under Dad's homeowner's policy. He also filed legal motions to seek restitution for the heirlooms Vivian had stolen or sold. We'd never recover everything, but we'd recover enough. The Bradfords eventually reached a private settlement with Vivian, reclaiming not only their deposit but additional funds for their trouble. When we met briefly at Ben's office, I apologized for everything they'd gone through. To my surprise, Emily Bradford pulled me into a warm hug. Your father must have been an extraordinary man, she said softly, to protect you so well, even after he was gone. He was, I replied, tears rising. The house mattered to him because we mattered to him. It was never just property, it was family. A month later, while cleaning out the attic, I found something unexpected, a loose floorboard near the chimney. Beneath it, sealed in a small fireproof box, were treasures Dad had hidden away. The original deed from my grandparents. My mother's wedding and engagement rings and a small USB drive labeled for Hannah. That evening, I sat at my desk, hands trembling slightly as I plugged it into my laptop. What I found inside left me speechless. Hundreds of digitized family photos, video clips of birthdays and holidays, summers at Lake Willoughby, and quiet Christmas mornings in our flannel pajamas. But what caught my breath most was a single video file titled, "For My Daughter." I clicked play. There he was, Dad, thinner, his voice softer than I remembered, but his eyes still bright with that quiet strength I'd always known. "If you're watching this," he began, "then I'm no longer there to say this in person. But know this, I'm so proud of the woman you've become, Hannah. The house, it's just walls and wood. But a home is what you make inside it. Fill it with laughter, with music, with Sunday pancakes and stories told at sunset. That's all I ever wanted for you." Tears rolled freely down my face. I listened to the whole message twice, then saved it to 3 different drives. I wasn't going to lose it. Ever. Over the months that followed, I did exactly what he'd asked. I hosted dinner parties in the dining room where we used to play cards. I cleaned out the garage and restored his workshop, teaching myself how to use his old tools. I planted lilies and lavender, his favorites, along the garden path. And some evenings, I sat alone on the porch swing, cradling a mug of tea, feeling like he was there beside me. 6 months after Vivian's departure, Ben Clark called. "The legal proceedings are complete," he said. "She's signed the settlement and repaid the value of the items she removed. She's also agreed never to contest the property transfer again." "Where is she now?" I asked, not out of concern, just curiosity. "Florida, I believe. She purchased a condominium near Naples with the remaining funds from your father's investment accounts. Those were rightfully hers per the will." And that was that. She hadn't walked away empty-handed. Dad had taken care of her as his wife. But she had failed in the one thing that mattered most, trying to take the house. His house. Our house. The cabin on Chestnut Hill Lane is still my home today. I often imagine Dad walking through it, noticing the updates I've made while smiling at the parts I've left untouched: the quilt on the bed, the old bookshelf in the den, the brass doorknobs he insisted on keeping. 3 generations have walked these floors, my grandparents, my parents, and now me. And someday, maybe my children will walk them too. The legacy continues. But what I took from this journey goes beyond inheritance or legal battles. I learned that my father's love didn't end with his death. That his wisdom shielded me from storms I never saw coming. That sometimes, the strongest strategy is quiet preparation, not loud confrontation. And I learned something about myself, too. That I could face betrayal and grief without becoming bitter. That resilience, paired with patience, can outlast manipulation. These were my father's final gifts, as valuable as the deed itself. Have you ever had to fight for something that was rightfully yours? Or face betrayal from someone you trusted? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. If this journey of reclaiming what mattered resonated with you, please hit like and subscribe for more stories about real life, resilience, and renewal. Thank you for walking this road with me. And remember, sometimes the most important battles aren't won in courtrooms. They're won in quiet resolve. Until next time.